Well, you might be able to pick up Jordan Mason or Devin Singletary or Chris Rodriguez. You might go for Adonai Mitchell, or maybe Garrett Wilson is there. Maybe Mike Evans is on your waiver wire and he might be playing this week. We welcome you to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Week 14 waiver wire. Week 14 is here. And the FFT Open playoffs are starting. So, by the way, if you are not in the top 4 in your FFT Open division, please do not make any transactions or I will rip my eyeballs out. Dave Richard, Jamey Eisenberg. Good morning, Dave. Big week here. A lot on the line. Fun time of year. How we doing?
I'm doing all right. It is definitely an interesting waiver wire week, and anybody that's in the playoff hunt in their fantasy leagues should be very interested in what's out there.
I think it's a really good waiver wire week, Jamey, especially compared to last week.
Last week was actually good. When I first sat down to write the story, I was like, "Ew, this sucks," and then I was like, "Oh, this is actually great." The receivers turned out to be good. Tight ends are good again, and we had a couple running backs emerge that could be good. Certainly, if you extend the parameters of where we draw the line. I always enjoy when I see other sites post on Twitter X. Who would you rather pick up this weekend? Christian McCaffrey or Jordan Mason? Like, that's not fair. But we have a few guys in the shallow leagues that could be interesting as well if they're available.
Well, Jordan Mason is 53% rostered on Sleeper. And it's usually Sleeper, Yahoo, ESPN are usually pretty similar. I'm just looking this up now. Jordan Mason is on ESPN. Will you just hurry up? Thank you. 53% roster on ESPN. I won't even look up Yahoo, but so we'll definitely talk about the shallow guys. In fact, why don't we do that just right now, real quick? There are a lot of guys like Chris Godwin and Mason and Alec Pierce, Christian Watson, who are rostered in more than 65% of leagues on CBS, but many of those guys are going to be more widely available on ESPN, on Yahoo, on Sleeper. So if you include all of those, Jamey, who would the top priorities be?
You got to look at Jordan Mason with Aaron Jones potentially out. He averaged, I believe it was 13 PPR points per game in the 4 games that he started in place of Jones. You mentioned Alec Pierce. Clearly, he's been great in the latter half of the season so far. Christian Watson, 2 of his last 3 games have been great. You got Trevor Lawrence, Jacoby Brissett still in that range at quarterbacks. So a little bit better than the group that we're going to talk about. And tight end, I know Kyle Pitts is in there. I'll have it.
I mean, I'll tell you, I Kincaid against the Bengals, if he plays this week. Don't know if he will, but
I think the fact that he practiced on a limited basis twice last week is a very good sign. And he's probably like, I don't want to face the Steelers. I'll come back next week for the Bengals. It'll be fun.
It will be fun.
Yeah, he'd be a must-start guy easily.
Yeah. All right, Dave, I'm going to let you go first then with the top 3 waiver wire priorities for the players that we typically talk about. Who would you go with?
If it's for just week 14, Chris Rodriguez is still at the top of the list, 54% available. He's followed by Brenton Strange. And I don't have a wide receiver in my top 2 because there are so many wide receivers that are interesting. The supply is pretty good. Jaden Higgins is my favorite. He's available in 49% of leagues. And that would be my top 3 for just this week. You only need to worry about week 14. You're not thinking about the future, but if you are thinking about the future, I think Mike Evans has to top the list. 55% available on CBS, and he's an IR stash until he comes back.
All right, I'm going to get to Jamey in just one second, but Chris Rodriguez, I'm surprised he's only 46% rostered, but it is feeling a little lucky, right? I mean, he gets pretty much no catches.
Right. That's true.
11 carries, and he scored the touchdown. He's playing well, but he gets Minnesota. They're still pretty good against running backs. I guess the Giants, that's great. But yeah, I don't know. Is that setting you up for a trap here with Chris Rodriguez?
I don't think it's a trap. I think it's just about getting running back depth, or you're desperate at running back. And this is the best of what's available. It's position scarcity for him to be at the top of the list. It's not about talent. If you're looking for a flex, yeah, I'd probably go Higgins over Rodriguez if it's just strictly for a flex spot on a fantasy team, especially if it's PPR.
Okay, Jamey, who are your top 3 priorities?
Mike Evans, and it's not close, would be number 1. Greg Dortch would be number 2. And then Isaac Tesla would be number 3.
Oh man. Okay, so you went all wide receivers there, Mike.
Yeah, and the latter two specifically for Week 14 because they're looking like they're going to be in pretty prominent spots.
Slight issue with Dortch. Obviously, Marvin Harrison's got this heel injury.
He's got to sit. Yep.
If he sits, then Dortch is great. I agree.
I hope so. 2 big games against San Francisco and Jacksonville, but he's got the Rams this week and then Houston. So competition steps up a little bit here and Brissett too, right? And for the Cardinals passing game. Do the Rams scare you at all as a matchup?
I mean, it's not as ideal as it was the last 2 games for Dortch, throwing out the week 13 game against Tampa Bay because Harrison played. So no, it's not a slam dunk. He's going to be awesome, but you're talking about 4 teams on a bye, and I'm sure when you start to look at the rankings, I know for me, it's not pretty with some of the injuries and some of the players we're talking about. So I think when you look at the receivers, for example, and I agree, Higgins should be added. You know, I'm surprised he's only at 51% rostered at this point after what he's done over the last month. We also are seeing clearly, you know, with teams out of playoff contention that they stop paying attention in their leagues. So I'm sure that's part of it. But you have Higgins, you have Adonai Mitchell, you have Devon Vele, you have guys that have, you know, started to perform well lately and getting targets. And I think when fantasy managers look at it and they say, okay, do I take the guy in Mitchell who just had this monster game? Do I take the guy in Vele who just had this monster game? Do I take the guy that Higgins who has a pretty solid floor, but we know he's not the number 1 guy in his own team, you know, where at least in Mitchell's case, he could be. And in Vele's case, you know, he may get more targets than Higgins based on what he's shown the last 2 weeks. Like for me, I'm looking at who has the most upside, and Dortch showed us what his upside is. He scored over 16 PPR points in each of the 2 games that he played without Harrison. And in the case of Tesla, it's much more of a reach because we haven't seen him have any more than 2 targets in a game. But we are talking about Detroit's offense against Dallas in what's probably going to be the highest scoring game of the week on paper. And I like that upside potential. So I'll take the chance for 1 week, you know, so if we're going on Dave's, you know, suggestion of just week 14, like I'll take Dortch and Tesla over the field. If we're going for who's going to help me win my league, Mike Evans is number 1 and it's not close.
Yeah, there's one other guy that not even a consideration in CBS leagues, basically, but he is 64% rostered on Sleeper, 70% rostered on ESPN, 82% rostered on Yahoo. He's Michael Wilson. So if Michael Wilson is out there, that would be a huge priority. But I think he's like 95% rostered.
Yeah, and if we want to extend it a little bit, I know you didn't give Dave this option, but you want to extend this a little bit, you know, Jordan Mason should be the number 1 player to add if he's available because of what his chances are. And then I think you also got to look at Zonovan Knight. You know, if Trey Benson doesn't return, again, same situation taking on the Rams, but he's scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. He's been over 13 PPR points in 3 straight games. Clearly, he's their favored running back. Michael Carter's going to get touches as well, and he's worth adding also. I know we'll talk about him. But I think if we're looking at, you know, different sites, you know, those 2 running backs, for me, much better than Chris Rodriguez, and you know, guys that you should be picking up and potentially starting this week.
Right. It's just the high rostership on CBS that keeps them from being ahead of Chris Rodriguez. I agree with you. How about another name to throw in there, but it's long term? It's not this week. Chuba Hubbard, who's only 27% available on CBS. I'm sure it's higher on other sites.
Yeah. Now, if we are looking ahead with the numbers that we typically deal with, Devin Singletary may be the lead, the running back for the Giants potentially.
Sure.
We don't know. Available. We don't know what Tyrone Tracy's injury, the extent of Tyrone Tracy's injury, and so you know, I added this late last night to the story which was published yesterday. I put him second behind Rodriguez just because if you need somebody for this week, you're not going to be able to use Singletary. But if you're in the playoffs, I would just skip past Chris Rodriguez and I'd go get Devin Singletary first.
I agree.
Yeah, it's a great call. Singletary only 39% rostered, and he's scored double-digit PPR fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games, and could say he might be running better than Tyrone Tracy. I mean, he was certainly last night, and he gets Washington coming out of the bye, so that's good. It's not so easy after that, but yeah, Singletary.
It's not horrible. I mean, and then it's Minnesota, and then it's Las Vegas, so it's not.
Yeah, it's not as
easy.
I'm
not scared of any of those matchups.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't know how many people are going to, look, you're in the fantasy playoffs. It's the semifinals. You're probably not starting him without hesitation. You're starting him with hesitation against the Vikings. But the other 2 games, you're probably starting him if you need a running back.
And Jordan Mason against Washington is very appealing this week. He's 72% rostered. When he was out, when Jones was out earlier, it was Carson Wentz with Jordan Mason, but still you do get a decent amount of running back carries in the McCarthy games. And the only issue is Aaron Jones is apparently day to day, so we don't know that Aaron Jones is actually going to miss this upcoming game. All right, so those are some of the names to know, whether it's Chris Rodriguez, Brenton Strange, Jaden Higgins, Dalton Schultz, I'm sure is a good option as well. Mike Evans, Greg Dortch, Isaac Tesla. Let me talk to you about Evans real quick here because, 45% rostered for a guy who has been so good, but in his first 3 games, there was no Chris Godwin. He scored 10.1, 10.6, 13.3 fantasy points. Now I give him a pass because he's faced AJ Terrell, Derek Stingley, and Sauce Gardner, but he's coming back to a crowded receiving core. Are we worried that he might be fool's gold, Dave, on Mike Evans?
You can't rule it out because he didn't get off to a great start. We don't know what he'll be like when he does come back, but it's a lot easier to pick up Mike Evans and put him on your bench. And then if you need him during the fantasy playoffs, you'll have more confidence starting him. Going back to Jamey's point about Devin Singletary. Okay, the only way you'll feel good about starting Devin Singletary in the fantasy playoffs, where it's win or go home, is if he's the only guy in New York's backfield. It's a really good matchup, and you lean on that. You'd rather have Mike Evans because you know about the pedigree, the track record. Hopefully the quarterback play gets a little bit better. Hopefully Tampa's in a bunch of shootouts and Mike Evans gets 7+ targets. But picking him up and throwing him on your IR or putting him even on your bench just seems like the easiest move you can make if your team is already ticketed or you think it'll be ticketed to the fantasy playoffs, i.e. you don't need somebody to replace Amon-Ra St. Brown this week, or you've been streaming wide receivers and you want to move on from John Mechie or somebody else that you picked up last week who didn't come through.
You're forgetting the best thing about Mike Evans. Let's just say he doesn't play this week and he comes back next week.
Don't even.
He's 860 yards away from another 1,000-yard season. So he's going to average 200+ yards per game in his final 4. I mean, it's going to be the most incredible thing we've ever seen.
That is so funny. Yeah. And this Mike Evans roster percentage just shows me that you don't have enough IR spots in your leagues. Okay. When I'm the commissioner of a league, I give 5 IR spots. And it might sound excessive, but those can fill up pretty quickly.
No, that's excessive.
It's not excessive. There's no reason why Mike Evans should be on waivers. And
what number do you give, Jamey? If 5 is excessive?
2. It's really the most incredible thing that you, who is like the most stringent commissioner in the history of commissioners, are so carefree with your IR spots.
Not carefree at all. First of all, I think Jamey's lying. I think he gives more than 2.
Nope.
Yes, 5 in the FFT league. Let's go to the Superflex league. I believe we have 5 in that one too.
No, he doesn't in the FFT or in the Superflex league because I had to drop Joe Burrow.
How many do we get in that league?
2.
Oh, it's a terrible league. You made him drop Joe Burrow in a Superflex.
I didn't make him do anything, but I picked up Joe Burrow because he did.